And, we also from the judo bank guys talked about that, that immigration mindset, that work hard, to make good type mindset is also what we want to be teaching to our community. But I do want to sort of segue that into in the research talking about the top 3 fears. And of course, let's start with the Gen Zs because they're the ones who have the most challenge. Let's again acknowledge that. And so these are their top 3 fears. Number 1, I won't have enough money to live comfortably. That comes back to that financial independence. Number 2, never being able to buy my own home. Number 3, being stuck in a job that I don't really enjoy or, I don't find fulfillment in. Then we go to Gen Ys and I won't have enough money to live comfortably. There's the money story again. So financial independence, money story sitting there at number 1. Number 2 is not reaching my full potential. Number 3 is suffering a long-term illness. Gen Xers, I won't have enough money to live comfortably. There it is, rocketing to number 1 again. That should be a single in the top 10. Suffering from long-term illness. And then number 3 is not reaching my full potential. And the boomers who have done a lot of their hard now and hopefully are in a sort of a happy place, they're still saying I won't have enough money to live comfortably, ironically, and then suffering long-term illness, and then none. I don't have any fears or worries. So it's good to see that coming through. But number 1, really at the top of the charts, the theme coming through that is this whole idea of fear about not having enough to sustain ourselves. I'm really glad that it's coming up early in conversations for those younger generations. But it's, because again, you talked, Mark, about the power and the magic of compound. Ultimately, that's what we're all about in terms of start your hard early, build up that wealth base that you can build up and let time sort of do a lot of that heavy lifting. What else can you share in those sort of fears and expand on that story for us, Mark?
Well, yeah, that's right, Ben. And the great thing is that young people have recognised that they're going to live longer, they're going to be active later on average, and they're going to have some higher expenses in those later years if they want to still, upgrade the car and live in their own place and have those options for travel, as we see with the baby boomers today, travel and lifestyle. Then they're going to need to save and to prepare for that. And where we're at in Australia is sometimes the younger generations can look at the baby boomers and say, well, there they are. If you just look at the 60 to mid 70s, they're 20% of the population. They own almost 60% of Australia's national private wealth. So their economic footprint is 2.5 times as large as their demographic footprint. I mean, it's a phenomenal high watermark of wealth attainment. And rather than point the finger in terms of envy, I think we need to have that as an aspiration to say, wow, they did well. They sacrificed in the younger years. They got into property and look at the result. So let's use that as a track. Let's use that as a proof point for us as well. And I think that is, yeah, well, they have proved it, haven't they? It's phenomenal. And largely not through super sophisticated investing, simply through, as number 1, a home that they lived in, but then, stepping up over time. Maybe they added a second one, or they upgraded and leveraged that a little bit, but it's pretty straightforward. And over the long term, that's what's provided that pretty incredible statistic that their net worth on average is more than twice their share of population. And they've got the highest wealth of any of the generations, about 1.7 million per household is the average. So it's pretty phenomenal. Now, at the other end, and I think this is the encouraging part of the story, the Gen Zs in their 20s and then into the Gen Ys in their 30s have the highest income of any of the generations. They're earning more than the baby boomers at the moment. And so it's, in other words, just simply a story of taking that high annual earnings and leveraging that into, over time, high wealth. And that comes by following the recipe of those that went before. So rather than feeling envious of those who have the high net worth, let's be grateful for those that have the high annual incomes, the earnings. And that makes sense. The younger generations have invested in their education. They're in demand. It's an aging workforce. They got the pick of jobs. There are more jobs available than people to fill them. What an excellent situation they are in. So they can exchange that time for money at a higher rate than we've ever seen. But it's what they do with that that'll determine whether they become like the baby boomers or whether they become a little bit experience rich but asset poor in their future.